In the age of misinformation and disinformation, it is vital that we use our powers of comprehension to discern truth from falsehood. As the mind is liable to error, what are the means we can use to comprehend truth in our world? In this video, we will further examine teachings from the School of Divine Philosophy on the material and spiritual powers of man. Welcome to another video on spiritual reality from the Baha'i perspective. There are only 4 accepted criteria of comprehension. That is, 4 criteria whereby the realities of things are understood. The first criterion is that of the senses. That is, all that the eye, the ear, the taste, the smell, and the touch perceive is called sensible. At present, all the European philosophers hold this to be the most perfect criterion. They claim that the greatest of all criteria is that of the senses, and they regard it as sacrosanct. And yet, the criterion of the senses is defective, as it can err. For example, the greatest of the senses is the power of vision. The vision, however, sees a mirage as water and reckons images reflected in mirrors as real and existing. It sees large bodies as small, perceives a whirling point as a circle, imagines the earth to be stationary and the sun to be in motion, and is subject to many other errors of a similar nature. One cannot, therefore, rely implicitly upon it. The second criterion is that of the intellect, which was the principal criterion of comprehension for those pillars of wisdom, the ancient philosophers. They deduced things through the power of the mind and relied on rational arguments. All their arguments are based upon reason. But despite this, they diverged greatly in their opinions. They would even change their own views. For 20 years, they would deduce the existence of something through rational arguments, and then afterwards, they would disprove the same again through rational arguments. Even Plato, at first, proved through rational arguments the immobility of the earth and the movement of the sun, and then subsequently established, again through rational arguments, the centrality of the sun and the movement of the earth. Then the Ptolemaic theory became widespread, and Plato's theory was entirely forgotten, until a modern astronomer revived it. Thus have the mathematicians disagreed among themselves, even though they all relied on rational arguments. Likewise, at one time they would establish a thing by rational arguments and disprove it at another, again by rational arguments. So, a philosopher would firmly uphold a view for a time and adduce a range of proofs and arguments to support it, and afterwards he would change his mind and contradict his former position by rational arguments. It is therefore evident that the criterion of reason is imperfect, as proven by the disagreements existing between the ancient philosophers, as well as by their want of consistency and their propensity to change their own views. For if the criterion of intellect were perfect, all should have been united in their thoughts and agreed in their opinions. The third criterion is that of tradition. That is, the text of the sacred scriptures, when it said, God said thus in the Torah, or God said thus in the Gospel. This criterion is not perfect either, because the traditions must be understood by the mind. As the mind itself is liable to error, how can it be said that it will attain to perfect truth and not err in comprehending and inferring the meaning of the traditions? For it is subject to error and cannot lead to certitude. This is the criteria of the leaders of religion. What they comprehend from the text of the book, however, is that which their minds can understand, and not necessarily the truth of the matter. For the mind is like a balance, and the meanings contained in the texts are like the objects to be weighed. If the balance is untrue, how can the weight be ascertained? Know therefore that what the people possess and believe to be true is liable to error. For if in proving or disproving a thing, a proof drawn from the evidence of the senses is advanced, this criterion is clearly imperfect. If a rational proof is adduced, the same holds true, and likewise if a traditional proof is given. Thus, it is clear that man does not possess any criterion of knowledge that can be relied upon. But the grace of the Holy Spirit is the true criterion, regarding which there is no doubt or uncertainty. That grace consists in the confirmations of the Holy Spirit, which are vouchsafed to man, and through which certitude is attained.